Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Tiana here once again, and I am back for the likes of the Maxi Toys videos. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Princess Peach Showtime for the Nintendo Switch. So, last time, we essentially did manage to tackle through 2 plays in Journey Forms within the 3rd floor so far. Like, for instance, we did somehow turn into Mighty Peach, and on top of that, we also did manage to win back into this Western-themed play, Journey Forms within a Cowgirl place, for not only for once, but twice. So as a result, we did somehow manage able to tackle through Act 2, as well as Act 3, in Journey Forms within a basement floor. Mind you about the fact that we did somehow miss out on not only one Sparkle Gem, somewhere in Journey Forms within Mighty Mission Alien Invasion play, but it's also we somehow missed out on 2 Sparkle Gems in Act 3 for the likes of the forms of Cowgirl Peach, for that particular play in mind. But don't worry, we'll be back for those eventually, which, don't worry, that'll make it happen. So today, for this video, is about the fact that we're going to be continuing things on and move on to the next play in Journey Forms within Floor 3. And that, we're going on to, well, we're going back into bakery stuff again. So, for instance, we're going on to Welcome to the Spooky Party. So, no matter what, though, it's almost inspired by, like, a Halloween-inspired theme to it though, which, get it, because it did say spooky party after all. So this means no matter what though, we still have to able to bake certain things, specifically, not only just trying to able to bake out a lot of cookies, but also we can able to once again try to able to decorate the cake itself. In fact, it's been quite some time since we actually play as Patisserie Peach, since in Journey Forms within the 1st floor. So no matter what though, just before the first boss in the game, as a matter of fact. So, and much like always, as soon as we're able to actually complete Act 2 for one of those plays in particular, then obviously though we can able to actually access to yet another play somewhere in the basement floor. So hopefully we'll tackle for that eventually later on. Because, obviously, if you couldn't tell already, is about the fact that, well, relatively speaking, though, is about the fact that, well, today's date, of course, there is the 25th of April today, in some cases in 2024 today, so I think, if I recall correctly, that we've only got about exactly 4 weeks left now until Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door Switch Remake is definitely going to be coming. So no matter what though, oh, that little delicious eclair. Like, I don't know about you, because I always attempt able to enjoy having eclairs recently, especially noticeable that for I've heard that Pinkie Pie once again did manage able to deliver a lot of baking items, or specifically desserts recently. Like, not only we did somehow manage able to try out not only eclairs, but also with the forms of profiteroles, and also Tiramisu, in some cases Mighty's favorite dessert after all, because obviously he did somehow finally glad that he somehow managed able to finally eat that particular Tiramisu recently, after the events of that particular celebration that we had from the likes of our 13th anniversary of the Maxi Toys YouTube channel, which you probably already know about that from the likes of the forms of ever since in February, which I can't even believe by saying this, it's been about 2 months already since we'd somehow managed able to celebrate the 13th anniversary of our YouTube channel. So yeah, it seems pretty interesting to say the least. And also we can able to decorate the cake based off on the likes of that particular face that's almost exactly look-alike of Stella, which is actually pretty interesting. So, and of course, just like the forms of how it does it in Act 1 though, then but obviously if you really want able to try to actually get every single Sparkle Gems in Journey Forms within this particular Patisserie Peach play, obviously though we need to be absolute perfect in order to try to claim yourselves, well, not only for the likes of the forms of those Sparkle Gems, but it's also with the forms of some of these collectibles as well. Specifically with either the ribbons or a bow, it feels like. So, anyway, Something's worth noting for as well is about the fact that one thing I surprisingly forgot to comment on back in Junior Forms have been Tuesday sometime, and that's what appears to be about the fact that yes indeed, that the Splatoon 3 Splatfest has recently have been ended since in Junior Forms have been a couple of days ago. So no matter what though, is about the fact that the actual Splatfest number 15 results, based off from the likes of those cutie animals, inspired by the forms of well, I don't know, spring related or something? Well, mind you, it's been quite some time since we actually mentioned something related to Splatoon 3 for the sake of the forms of the Splatfest. So, anyway, as far as the final results, as far as this is concerned, I was quite pleasantly surprised that Team Bear Cubs is the only team that did manage to able to have a lot, I mean a lot of points. So, relatively speaking though, is that with the forms of the final results so far anyway, in regards to the forms of that particular result, and relatively speaking though, I've already mentioned about this before, that Team Bear Cubs did somehow receive 485 points, and meanwhile for Team Little Bunnies was actually received 175 points. And finally, for Team Baby Cheeks, did somehow receive 210 points. So, yeah, it seems kind of interesting with that particular result. But then again, no, it's hard to comment on in Junior Forms of that particular exact result. But regardless of everything else, though, it was just actually quite interesting results, to say the least. So, and also good news, folks, is about the fact that recently I've decided able to actually come back onto Sonic Dash recently. And because of this though, finally, after so many months of hiatus where it comes to able to unlock, you know what the forms of Chrono Silver that obviously we keep on about? Ever since in Junior Forms within a couple of months ago, well, I'm happy to report that yes indeed, I finally managed to unlock him, and it's a perfect timing too, especially because, out of nowhere, we're about to be receiving not one, not two, not 3, but 4 upcoming cosmetic characters coming up, not just by the forms within Sonic Dash, but also with Sonic Forces Mobile as well. So relatively speaking, I was about the fact that first off, I believe the first character they did somehow highlight it is the forms of Serious Knuckles, based off on the likes of the forms of, well, suffice to say that tomorrow, that Knuckles the series on Paramount Plus is going to be releasing tomorrow, specifically in the American version, because, you know, we have to wait until 2 days time now for the UK version. So, but still, I might be fine with the forms of trying to wait for a certain amount of time until that particular series is going to be releasing for reals. So, I mean, sure, no matter what though, is about the fact, I suppose, no matter what though, not too while ago actually. Now, do you guys even remember about the fact, I think I've already briefly mentioned about this or something? Or, technically speaking, I believe that both Mario and Sonic have mentioned about this or something. But basically though, they somehow released yet another new clip, but this time involves around with Sonic and Knuckles. And as a result, one of those clips in particular did manage to take place in Junior Forms within the actual attic part, you know, with that particular familiar scene, not only for the likes of the ending of the first Sonic movie, but also with the forms of the beginning scene in the second Sonic movie, after that particular C-Tail chaotic moments or something like that. Mind you, it's been quite some time since I actually have last watched both Sonic the Hedgehog 1 as well as Sonic the Hedgehog 2 movies respectively, because still, no matter what though, we are still waiting for the third Sonic movie to be released, but I'm still basically excited for the third Sonic movie after all. Well, it wasn't until we've realized about the fact that we got to wait for a little while, because, relatively speaking, we've only, still got 8 months to go until that particular film is going to be releasing. Well, I'm really hoping it will not get delayed, though, because if it did, I'm going to be blaming on the forms of Mufasa the Lion King movie, as far as I'm aware. And also, I just realized we somehow missed out on that particular ribbon, so... oh well, that's okay though, because then again, we'll be back for that particular stage eventually, so we are technically not done with the forms of Patisserie Peach for quite some time. So, anyway, so that pretty much does it for the sake of the forms of this particular stage. And now let's go ahead and move on to... if I recall correctly, that particular transformation, I was really curious to check it out. And first off, they're going to be doing with that particular symbol thing, as you probably already expect. So this means we can now able to go into the basement floor, so that way we can able to actually tackle through the third act of Patisserie Peach. So, but let's not focus on that right now, because we're now going to be moving on to the final play in Journey Forms of the third floor, and that's what appears to be Melody of the Sea. So, I guess something tells me we might come across into yet another transformation, I see. So, anyway, with that being said though, is that obviously, in addition about the fact that Serious Knuckles is definitely going to be coming for the likes of not only Sonic Dash, but also with Sonic Forces Mobile as well, but also in addition to that, during at some point in next month, which appears to be on May, that actually kind of think about it, that we're about to be receiving 2 characters in Journey Forms of it next month in May, and those are Drummer Cream and Metal Sonic Mech 3.0. Oh, that does look familiar. Which, as a result, for those of you who don't know, that back in Journey Forms of in 2007, that there was a game called Sonic Rivals 2, where basically the game introduced into ourselves Metal Sonic version 3.0, where it's likely a much more of advanced version of the regular Metal Sonic, and in addition to that though, different color scheme, where basically I think that was only accessible in not only from the likes of Shadow story as well as Metal Sonic story, and in addition to that though, there's also Silver and Espio story as well. That's basically the Metal Sonic version 3.0 only existence within the 4 stories combined, whilst unlike in Sonic and Tails story, as well as Knuckles and Rouge's story, obviously the Metal Sonic version 3.0 never appeared in Journey Forms of those stories respectively. So, yeah, that's actually kind of interesting about the fact that not only that Metal Sonic version 3.0 did receive the actual Jack-specific figurine just recently, not too while ago, but also we can able to finally get a chance to play as him since in Sonic Rivals 2, except this time, no matter what though, it's going to be playable on not only Sonic Dash, but also with Sonic Forces Mobile. So, hopefully though, in Journey Forms of the later days to come, then obviously though, I'm going to be able to be continuously going to be playing through Sonic Dash quite a lot of times, just in case I can able to actually unlock some even more characters, which as a result by that time in that particular point, that I'm pretty sure we've almost had exactly 100 playable characters in Journey Forms of in Sonic Dash. Well, mind you, in Journey Forms of in Sonic Forces Speed Battle, or should I say, Sonic Forces Mobile, has already managed able to actually surpass 100 plus playable characters in that game, despite the fact that I somehow still give up on that game, just because I'm not exactly great when it comes to the forms of trying to able to be playing through competitive type of game like that, because obviously though, sometimes I get wrecked in Journey Forms of in performances and all that stuff, which, yeah, that's what I can really able to say about that, I guess. So, but anyway, and also, for those of you who do remember back in Journey Forms event sometime in March, that did you guys even remember about the fact that, well, we've already managed able to put up with our community image? Well, you guys even know about the fact that recently I just put up with the forms of that particular familiar transformation coming up, which as a result will stand on the podium. And, relatively speaking now, is about the fact that I get the strong sense of feeling it might actually feel a bit inspired by not only the Little Mermaid, but also with something else. So, let's see what this transformation reveals us.
Enchanting.
So yes, we ended up turning into a mermaid. So yeah, that's actually quite cool. And believe it or not though, is that this is what I was talking about the fact that, do you guys even remember about, like, you know, sometime in March, that basically we've already put up with our community post that features not only Twilight Sparkle, but it's also with the forms of Queen Nauvoo, as well as the forms of Princess Skystar, and also same applies with the forms of other characters as well, based off from My Little Pony franchise. Well, apparently though, that particular transformation does also inspires by the forms of not only for the sake of the forms of the Little Mermaid, but also in the Sea Equestria location from the likes of in My Little Pony the movie 2017, as well as the forms of one of those episodes in season 8 called Surf and or Turf. I think it's what it says anyway, because relatively speaking though, it's about the fact, as you can tell, that you can't jump in during the forms of Mermaid Peach after all, because she can able to swim. And basically what you can do with the forms of Mermaid Peach is that you can able to actually perform singing, which as a result, yeah, it almost inspires by Ariel for a moment as well, except the fact that Peach does not have her red hair, so it makes sense to able to actually make things a little bit slightly similar for that regard. Although, mind you, no matter what though, is about the fact that we must able to actually just do quite a lot of multitasking and stuff like that while trying to save those musicians. So either way though, let's just go ahead and go on to the next bit. So now, in order to able to actually take control of the forms of those fishies in the background, that we have to able to perform singing. By doing so is by pressing the B button until you're able to perform that particular action. And no matter what though, as you can tell from that particular clamshell right there, that in order to able to actually open up the clamshells, we need to guide those fishes. So just in case you can able to open up the forms of not only clamshells, but also able to actually, you know, access the forms of some secrets here and there too, including with the forms of sparkle gems and vice versa though, really. So because of that though, something tells me one of those musicians has been trapped inside in that particular big clamshell right here, so we definitely need to able to get him out. But here's the thing though, if you do manage to able to guide lesser amount of fishes, then obviously it won't budge. So we need to able to obtain even more fishes around here. And unfortunately though, I somehow missed yet another sparkle gem, but don't worry, we'll be back for that eventually, so don't you guys worry. So, anyways though, let's talk about the forms of another character that's about to be coming up, and something tells me it's going to be yet another cosmetic character, but this time with Blaze the cat. So no matter what though, I'm not exactly sure what her costume was actually based off from, although let me know in the comments down below. So just I'm sure for the fact I just want to know about the forms of that particular, well, design that is almost entirely based off from. And also, as far as I'm aware, is that when it comes to Serious Knuckles, not only does it able to have the exact same model as the forms of how it does it in Movie Knuckles, since in Sonic the Hedgehog 2, the movie event, but it's also about the fact that they, yes indeed, they somehow bring back the forms of that familiar Stars cowboy hat, since in Sonic OVA, or Sonic the Hedgehog the movie, released originally in 1996 in Japan, whilst compared to the English version has to wait in 1999. Well, it's technically more accurately a combination of two episodes with the forms of that particular, you know, combined into one movie, but with English dub. So, despite the fact that the English dub is just questionable, except the fact that with Tails' voice sounds a bit, it just sounds a bit off, at least for I've noticing that already. So, but that's just me anyway though. Well, mind you, I haven't exactly watched that particular film for some time, because obviously, again, still, you know, waiting for not only Sonic the Hedgehog 3 to come out, but also with Knuckles the series as well. So, and I'm still very curious to know about the forms of if it does have a post-credit scene or something, just before the events of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 is eventually going to be happening. Well, then again, we'll have to wait and see what happens until that time comes. So, anyways, and as far as I'm aware, whenever I did manage to double check on the actual status though, that when it comes to the forms of date events, obviously though, Knuckles, the Serious Knuckles cosmetic character is about to start until tomorrow. And as far as I'm aware, like I mentioned this before, Drama Queen is going to be starting until May, specifically 13th of May. And meanwhile, for Metal Sonic version 3.0, or Mark 3.0, it's about to be coming until the 20th of May. So, yeah, and as far as I'm aware, if I recall correctly, maybe it's a possibility where the forms of that cosmetic character for Blaze the cat is expected to be either in, I don't know, by the end of May or the beginning of June. It's a bit difficult to tell at this point, because as far as I'm aware, that I just need able to take a break for a little while just in case if Serious Knuckles will be accessible now when it comes to trying to able to unlock him or something like that. So, but anyway, oh, there's also another thing I want to point out as well. Speaking of something related to Sonic the Hedgehog, out of nowhere, Sonic Frontiers sequel is actually going to be in development. So, yeah, it feels like, yes indeed, that Sonic Frontiers 2 is going to be confirmed. So, yeah, that was pretty unexpected. And as far as I'm aware, unlike the first game though, where basically it did somehow manage to release it on multiple platforms, including Nintendo Switch, so I don't think it's possible it's going to be releasing on PlayStation 4 as well as Xbox One, because at this point in time, that Sonic Frontiers 2 is most likely going to be releasing on next generation of systems, including a possibility of the next Nintendo system eventually. Well, then again, it's a bit tricky to tell at this point, because as you can see, at the ending portion of this particular play right there, obviously we need to be able to sing directly right at these particular fishy notes, and once you're trying to succeed, then obviously though you will able to actually get yourselves a Sparkle Gem. However, if you failed on that, obviously, if you couldn't tell already, ever since in the third and the final act, in the, well, Cowgirl play, that basically though, that since we did somehow do not protect one of those cards, this means that we somehow failed that particular Sparkle Gem to obtain. So, but then again though, we'll be back for that eventually. So with that being said, yeah, we are basically almost gotten everything, except we are missing 2 Sparkle Gems. So, I will admit though, is that I'm not a big fan of the forms of the linear progression system when it comes to the forms of if you really want to go for a full 100% completion, then if you're about to miss one of those specific important collectibles, then obviously though is about the fact that you have to like either retry the level by simply going to the pause menu and just try the entire stage again, or you have to wait for a little longer until you've decided able to actually complete the stage first, and then you can go back onto the actual play itself. So, but then again, sometimes it might take a bit of some time to able to try to figure something out of how to able to actually obtain certain, not only Sparkle Gems, but also with certain, not only bows, but also with the forms of ribbons as well. So, anyway, so now the boss door is now being accessible, but before we get onto that though, we need to take care of the forms of the third and the final act for Patisserie Peach before we're able to continue with our story progression. So, anyway, there's also another thing I want to point out as well, is that it's going to be pretty strange until in 2025 that not only we're going to be able to be receiving not only Avatar 3 in Journey Forms of some time in 2025, specifically 19th of December, and around the same day actually, that we're about to be receiving the SpongeBob Movie 4, in some cases the SpongeBob Movie Search for SquarePants, releasing around the exactly the same time as each other, which as a result is pretty insane in Journey Forms of some of those films to be released in Journey Forms of December month, at least in some other years anyway, because I already know for a fact that, well, obviously for this year we're able to actually receive not only Sonic the Hedgehog 3, which I'm super hyped about, and also we're about to be receiving Mufasa the Lion King, which I'm probably not going to see it, because as far as I'm aware, that we've already on about this, because obviously though, the visual presentation for I've seen the actual first look footage of Mufasa the Lion King, the actual presentation as well as the visual effects just looks a bit bleak. So, but that's just me anyway. So, anyway, so we somehow made our way to this particular point right here. Now, before we continue with our progression right here, we need to stand on this little spotlight to able to receive the bonus area right here. Now, it doesn't really matter if you mess this up right here, because obviously the ball itself will able to come back. So exponentially it takes a bit of time to able to like get the ball back. And believe it or not though, it's about the fact that this entire act is going to be filled to the brim with a lot of mini games we have to play through. So, but anyway, oh yeah, there's also another thing I want to point out as well, that recently we've somehow received a yet another version update for the Nintendo Switch recently, and this time what appears to be the forms of version 18.0.1. And I can't really give that much details, I'm afraid, because something tells me though, still no luck of the forms of unique home menu themes and all that stuff. I really do miss the old days where basically for certain Nintendo systems, specifically with not only Nintendo Wii, but also with Nintendo Wii U, as well as Nintendo DSi, as well as Nintendo 3DS, they do have the unique background music for certain menu screens for certain systems, whilst compared to the Nintendo Switch, I will admit it though right away, the amount of charm is actually kind of missing. So because of that though, with the lack of music, and on top of that, the lack of vibrant colors in the backgrounds, which I will have to admit it though, if the actual next Nintendo system were able to actually bring back the actual unique personality traits, we're able to actually just try to make the actual visuals a lot more vibrant and alive, enjoying forms of the actual home menu screens and stuff like that. But then again though, we'll have to wait and see what happens if the actual thing decides to able to announce it or something like that. So, but then again though, sometimes it takes a bit of time, but either way though, let's just go ahead and start decorating multitude of cakes before we able to, like, well, get certain progression for this point right here. So, anyway, there's also another thing I want to talk about this as well, is that I'm glad to report that Nintendo Live 2024 is now finally back up and running. Although, the only difference is this time around though, it was originally going to be able to take place in Tokyo, but as it turns out, they're going to be switched things around, which as it turns out, is now going to be taking place in journey forms of Sydney in Australia. So because of that though, yeah, it's actually pretty nice about the fact that the actual Nintendo Live is now going to be finally coming into the forms of reality again, after the events of this particular horrible incident. So because of that though, yeah, it's going to be taking place in journey forms of by the end of August, and relatively speaking though, until the 1st of September. So yeah, it doesn't take that long though, especially noticeable because it only lasted for about, I don't know, 1 day or something like, or 2. Well, usually relatively speaking though, that's as far as I can try and able to explain about that. So anyway, there's also another thing I want to talk about this as well, while doing the forms of the actual specific progression right here. And as you can tell, since that we somehow beat her first to decorate the whole entire cake, then obviously though we get ourselves a yet another sparkle gem right here. So, and no matter what though, is about the fact that originally though, for what I just found out, that there's this upcoming DreamWorks movie called The Wild Robot, that it was supposed to be able to be arriving and doing at some point on September 20th, if I recall correctly, for this year. But as it turns out, that particular film is going to be delayed by a week. Because the reason being for this is because to able to avoid the competition with Transformers 1 on the exact same weekend. So makes sense, because obviously though, no matter what though, we just don't want to able to actually get into the forms of that particular competition between whoever became the most popular films at the time, joining forms of some weekends or anything else like that. But for I've seen the actual trailer for The Wild Robot, it does look pretty cool though, especially noticeable because I can totally see why that a lot of people out there are actually, surprisingly enough, are going to be excited for it. So, although I was a little bit skeptical at first, but then the more I try to able to understand of what the actual the film represented for, then obviously though, I'm going to be easily going to be hyped about it. So, I'm sure that a lot of people are going to be hyped about that as well. So, well, as far as I'm aware, because as far as I can definitely tell, that DreamWorks is actually getting a bit struggle recently when it comes to the forms of, well, at least after the events of Puss in Boots: The Last Wish was actually a massive success. And as far as I'm aware, unlike in any other movies like Teenage Kraken, as well as the forms of Trolls Band Together, that the actual review scores or anything else like that, it just goes all over the place, as far as you can definitely tell from the sake of the forms of, you know, personal preference or something like that. So, but anyway, also another thing I want to point out as well is that, as you can tell, we now ended up face up against with this very, very creepy baker right here, and basically your job is to simply get able to stack as many of those cookies as possible before he does it first. So yeah, relatively speaking, we need to act fast until you're able to actually get not only some more sparkle gems, but also if you somehow lost, you have to able to retry that particular point again, I guess. So, although luckily though, the actual sparkler right here, with the Purrjector sparkler, were able to decide to help you out in journey forms of this particular point right here. So yeah, when you get the hang of it though, it's actually not too shabby for the most part. It's just that you don't want to mess up at least once, because otherwise if you mess up once, then it's not possible for you to able to actually get some even more sparkle gems, at least as far as I'm usually concerned with this point. Although mind you, because whenever I first got to this point, I've almost done amazingly well, except the fact that I somehow messed up quite a few times. So, but either way, so since we did somehow stack up some more biscuits, or cookies to be more specifically, then obviously we somehow dominated it, basically. And it's even cool enough about the fact that, yes indeed, we've somehow got the yet another ribbon from earlier ago, so that means everything else is all hunky-dory and everything else like that. So, but anyway, and it's also worth noting for, actually, is that recently, during the Informs event yesterday, not only did we somehow receive 1, but 2 brand new N64 games have been recently been revealed from the likes of the forms of the most recent Shadow Drop announcement. And no matter what though, they somehow bring in 2 of those games being developed by Acclaim. So, and what these 2 games in questioning will that be? Well, as it turns out, not only does Extreme G made its way to the Nintendo Switch online subscription services for expansion pack for the Nintendo 64 stuff, but it's also, out of nowhere, Iggy's Wrecking Balls that somehow made its appearance. And I was not expecting with that particular game to somehow appears out of nowhere, because I first saw that game since whenever I looked upon the actual Let's Play from the likes of Slim Kirby back in Journey Forms of 2012 sometime, and it may look a bit interesting to say the least, like obviously like a racing game, and no matter what though, it takes place likely as a result in 2.5D platforming racing genre or something. Well, mind you, it's been ages since I actually known about that game, since in 2012. Well, I was originally trying to get that game, but after I looked upon the forms of the actual specific playthroughs of that game, likely results in journey forms of some of the most frustrating levels in the whole entire game. I don't think it's possible for me to able to actually get the game anymore. Although, luckily for Nintendo Switch owners out there, then obviously though we can able to finally get a chance to able to experience that game, despite the fact that there's going to be a lot of frustration involved, ranging from rubber banding AI, and on top of that, the level design is not that very interesting, and relatively speaking though, it's just about the fact that the actual the models with those specific playable characters looks a bit weird. So no matter what though, yeah, I don't think it's possible I can able to get the game anymore, especially noticeable that, from what I can tell, the price tag, whenever I looked upon the forms upon eBay, it's pretty hard to explain, but I'm sure about the fact that I'll explain more about that if we get onto the forms of the next floor coming up during at some point until next Tuesday, basically. So anyway, so now we do need 20 sparkle gems in order to able to actually access to the 3rd boss in the game. So, and it looks like, as a matter of fact, we now ended up in the halfway point in terms of the story progression in Princess Peach Showtime. So, yeah, it feels like we're getting pretty close to the point where the fact that not only certain plays might felt a little bit lengthy, but it's also about the fact that certain sparkle gems are pretty difficult to obtain if you do not know what you're supposed to be doing for it. Well, either way though, then again, we'll talk more about that if we get on to the later plays to come. So, anyway, oh, and there's also another thing I want to point out as well, is that during at some point, only in Japan, that basically there's going to be a special parade during the forms of the Universal Studios in Japan. And by the looks of all that stuff though, for what I've looked upon it anyway, is actually going to be called No Limit. So basically though, it's about the fact that not only does it able to actually bring back the familiar parade stands from the likes of in the Super Nintendo world in Japan, ranging from Yoshi, Peach, Luigi, and also Mario as well, from the likes of the forms of the Mario Kart stands, but also for the very first time ever, that Princess Daisy might make her way to the forms of her first appearance on the actual parade. So, yeah, pretty cool though. And as far as I'm aware, the actual parade is about to start until the 3rd of July, and it finishes until the 1st of September. So, yeah, relatively speaking, that's all I can really say about it. And, also another thing I want to point out as well is that, yes indeed, we've somehow received the actual new update for the likes of Sonic Dash just recently. So because of that though, saying about the forms of some new characters is actually going to be coming, like Serious Knuckles is going to be arriving, and on top of that, Metal Sonic version 3.0 is actually going to be joining the actual roster, and you pretty much get the idea for that point. So, and also the final thing I want to talk about this as well, before we take on to the forms of the next boss fight right here, basically though, is that it looks like we're about to be getting yet another Darkle game is going to be coming onto the Nintendo Switch, except this time is actually based off from the Japanese exclusive PlayStation 1 game for some time, since in 1999, and that game in question in that is that we're about to be receiving, well at least only in Japan anyway, like Darkle Ikari non-Tekken is going to be coming on the Switch until the 1st of August, which is roughly the exact same time, as in not only for the sake of the forms of some more LEGO Super Mario brands, like always, just like the forms of how it does it ever since in not only in 2020, but also with 2021, 2022, as well as 2023 respectively. So, yeah, you get the idea for that point. So, anyways though, that's all I can really say about the forms of some news and discussions alike, as far as I'm aware. So, just relatively speaking, that was about the fact that that's all I can really say about it, I guess. So, anyways, let's get into the forms of the next boss fight right here. And something tells me it feels like a very strange boss, like basically we're fighting against with this particular cat. So, yeah, kind of interesting to say the least. So yeah, basically in this entire boss fight is, well, I won't lie to you about the fact that whenever I first got to this boss fight, that it's a bit confusing at first whenever first time I able to actually experience this boss fight, but the more I play it, I can probably understand of how to able to try to deal the amount of damage to the forms of this particular weird cat boss fight. Although it does have its name, by the way, which, as it turns out, his name was, if I could recall correctly, is actually Purrjector Cat. So, yeah, basically it's about the fact that you got able to dodge his, not only his tail, but it's also about the fact that we need to dodge his paws. So, just to ensure for the fact that you don't want to get knocked back, or even in some cases you don't want to get hurt by it. And every once in a while though, there's this little weird bomb that you have to able to guide right into the center. Once you've done so, then obviously though you have to wait in that particular projector claws decides able to do a bit of a slant thing right there. And chances are you're able to actually let the bomb go fly right onto the forms of Purrjector Cat, and just like the forms of how it does on the previous two bosses, obviously though we have to do a lot of button mashing when it comes to trying to deal with this very strange little spirit orb or anything else like that. So there we go. That particular boss is completely done. Well, at least for now. And that way, the third floor has now been completed. Well, almost anyway, because like I said before, we are still missing some more of those sparkle gems, as well as the forms of that particular ribbon that we did somehow miss over time. But something tells me, after when you do manage to complete the third floor, we can now able to actually do, well, not only continue proceedings for the game by going into the fourth floor, but also, get this, we can now able to actually access to fast travel, thanks to the forms of this lovely star lift. So basically what that means is that we can now able to actually traverse into other floors without need to worry about the forms of not only a bunch of loading screens, but it's also about the fact that we couldn't able to actually just to like do a long walking travels anymore. So this will come in handy though, especially noticeable about the fact that if we do manage to able to complete the fourth floor, or the upcoming fifth floor more like, then obviously though it's about the fact that we can now able to actually use the star lift in order able to actually, you know, do fast travel, which I fully appreciate. Especially noticeable because thankfully though, the actual length of the actual specific upcoming parts will go a lot more quicker than I was expecting. So, and of course, just like before, that not only we can able to actually access to next rehearsal, but it's also about the fact that we can able to actually dress up as a different outfit, which this time it appears to be based off from Purrjector cat. So yeah, let me just go ahead and go into the first floor quickly. So just in case I can able to actually buy yet another dress that I can able to try on. So yeah, that again though, like I said before, there's nothing else I can really say about the forms of today's topic at this point. I mean, I've already explained quite enough as it is. So relatively speaking, I was just about the fact I was really still surprised about the fact that not only Extreme G did somehow make its appearance, but also with Iggy's Wrecking Balls. So I was assuming about the fact that they're trying to bring Diddy Kong Racing, but as a result, we still only informs within April and what have you. So maybe it's a possibility that we might able to actually see some more Shadow Drop Games announcements during the forms of the Nintendo Switch Online subscription services in the future, between like May or June or anything else like that. But we shall see. So with that being said, folks, is that we get endings off at this point right here. So join me next time for more of Let's Play of Princess Peach Showtime. Is that we're going to be continuing things on and move on to the 4th floor. And we've got some more plays to play around with, in addition to our new transformation as well. So I'll see you guys until on Tuesday. Later, fellas.